The small town was buzzing with excitement that afternoon. It was the day of the local talent show, the kind of event that brought everyone together in the old community hall. The smell of popcorn and fresh paint filled the air, and laughter and chatter bounced off the walls. Children ran past the rows of chairs, their eyes wide with anticipation, while parents tried to keep them calm. In the middle of it all, there was a boy standing near the edge of the hall, clutching a worn-out case that had seen better days. His clothes were faded and a little too big for him, and his shoes had patches on them where the color had rubbed away. He looked around nervously, noticing the way people were looking at him. Some whispered to each other, some giggled, and a few even shook their heads. The boy didn't move right away. He wanted to, but the laughter made his heart pound like a drum in his chest. He had been dreaming of this moment for a long time, even if it seemed impossible. Music was his escape, the one place where he felt free. Every night, he had practiced in his tiny room, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath him as he ran his fingers over the strings. Sometimes he played until his fingers hurt, and sometimes he played until he forgot he was even tired. He imagined himself standing on a stage just like this one, where people would listen, really listen, to the music coming from him. But now, standing here, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. The whispers around him felt louder than ever. People were judging before he had even started. That made him want to turn around and leave, but something inside him said no. He had come too far to turn back now. The announcer called out names, and the boy's turn was getting closer. He watched others perform, some with confidence and grace, others with awkward nerves. Every time someone went on stage and received applause, his stomach tightened. He wondered if the crowd would ever clap for him or if they would just laugh. A group of teenagers at the back made jokes under their breath, and he could feel their eyes on him. They didn't know his story, his struggle, or the nights he had spent practicing alone. They only saw a boy who looked out of place, and that was enough for them to mock him. When his name was finally called, he felt a wave of fear and excitement crash over him at the same time. He held his case tighter and walked toward the stage, trying to keep his head up. The lights were brighter than he expected, and the crowd seemed larger than he had imagined. He could hear laughter and whispers, but he focused on the case in his hands. This was more than a performance. It was a test of courage. With each step, he reminded himself that he was ready. He reminded himself of every night he had practiced, every hour he had spent perfecting each note. He reminded himself that music was his strength, his voice, and his truth. As he reached the stage, he placed the case down and carefully opened it. The instrument inside was old but well-loved, worn from years of playing but polished with care. He ran his fingers over it, feeling its familiar weight and shape. The laughter in the audience seemed to grow louder, as if they were challenging him, daring him to fail. He took a deep breath, and for a moment, everything else faded. The chatter, the mocking, even the bright lights, all of it disappeared. In that moment, it was just him and the music. He sat down on the stool, adjusted his posture, and took another deep breath. His fingers hovered over the strings, trembling slightly at first. He thought about all the times he had imagined this moment, and now it was real. The first note came out soft and uncertain, but steady. He closed his eyes, letting the sound fill the room. The laughter didn't stop immediately, but he didn't let it touch him. He focused on the music, letting it flow naturally, letting it tell the story that words could never capture. Slowly, the notes began to gain confidence. What started as a simple tune grew into something richer and more intricate. The boy's fingers moved with surprising speed and accuracy, his body swaying slightly with the rhythm. Some of the audience members began to quiet down, their attention caught by the unexpected skill. The whispers turned into puzzled murmurs, and the laughter began to fade. He didn't notice. He was lost in the melody, in the story he was telling through each note. His heart was still racing, but now it was with excitement instead of fear. A few people leaned forward in their seats, trying to take in what they were hearing. The boy's music was not just skillful. It was full of emotion. Every note seemed to speak of hope, struggle, and a dream that refused to die. The very atmosphere in the hall changed. as if the walls themselves were listening. The boy opened his eyes slightly and noticed the change in the crowd. Some faces that had been mocking now showed surprise, some even admiration. He didn't smile yet, he stayed focused. This was still just the beginning, and he knew that the rest of the piece had to carry the same passion and truth. The laughter and whispers had become almost non-existent, replaced by an attentive silence. The boy's confidence grew with each passing moment. The nervousness that had weighed him down earlier now felt like fuel, driving him to play with even more feeling. Every movement was deliberate, every note intentional. The crowd began to sense that something extraordinary was happening, something that could not have been expected from the boy they had laughed at. Time seemed to stretch as the boy played, each moment filled with anticipation and emotion. People who had been ready to mock him were now holding their breath, caught in the spell of his music. He felt a connection with the audience, even though he hadn't spoken a word. They were listening, truly listening, and he was giving them everything he had. He remembered the nights of practice, the silent tears, the determination that had pushed him to this stage. All of that led to this very instant, and he poured it all into the music. By the end of his first piece, the room was almost completely silent. The boy slowly lifted his head, his eyes meeting the audience. There were no more whispers, no more mocking laughter. Instead, there was a stunned pause, a collective realization that what they had just witnessed was far beyond anything they had expected. The boy felt a small spark of pride, but he didn't let it distract him. He had more to play, and he knew that the real magic was still to come. He took a deep breath, ready to continue, ready to show that talent and passion could overcome even the harshest judgment. As he prepared for the next piece, the boy noticed the subtle shift in the audience. People were no longer looking at him as the poor boy on stage. They were beginning to see him as a musician, someone who deserved attention and respect. He smiled slightly, not out of arrogance, but out of quiet satisfaction. He had faced the laughter and the judgment and had not faltered. He had taken the first step toward something greater, and he was determined to continue, note by note, until the audience could no longer deny the skill and heart behind his music. The boy's story on that stage had only just begun, but the first part was already a triumph. He had turned fear into courage and mockery into silence. Every note he played carried a piece of his journey, and every sound resonated with those who had chosen to listen. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, he felt the power of his own talent, the strength of his determination, and the possibility of turning doubt into admiration. In that small moment, under the bright lights and in front of the skeptical crowd, the boy was no longer just a figure of ridicule. He was a young musician ready to make his mark on the world. The boy sat on the stool, his fingers poised above the strings, feeling the familiar tremble of nerves mixed with anticipation. The hall had gone quiet, the chatter and laughter from before replaced with an expectant hush. He could hear the faint shuffling of feet and the soft murmur of a few parents encouraging their children to stay still. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly, trying to calm his racing heart. This was the moment he had been waiting for, yet the weight of it pressed heavily on his shoulders. He started with a simple melody, slow and careful, almost tentative. The first few notes were soft, barely filling the space, but there was a clarity to them, a kind of honesty that no one could ignore. The boy closed his eyes, letting the sound guide him, letting the music speak where words could not. Each note was a small step, a careful assertion that he belonged here on this stage, in front of all these people who had doubted him. At first, there were a few hesitant glances from the crowd. People were unsure of what to make of this boy who had seemed so unremarkable at first glance. Some of the teenagers who had been making jokes still whispered to each other, their smirks fading as they tried to follow the rhythm. A few adults leaned forward, curiosity beginning to replace skepticism. Something about the way he played drew them in, a subtle power in the simplicity of his music. As he continued, the melody began to expand, notes flowing more freely. His fingers moved with increasing confidence, tracing patterns that were both intricate and beautiful. The boy could feel the music rising within him, a force that seemed bigger than his fears. Each note became stronger, each movement more assured. The hall seemed to respond, the energy of the audience shifting in real time with the music. People who had laughed moments ago were now silent, their attention fully captured. He glanced at a few audience members, catching the surprise in their eyes. They had expected failure, but they were beginning to see talent, determination, and something rare that went beyond just skill. The boy did not let this recognition distract him. He used it as fuel to push further, to play with more depth, more emotion. He could feel the story in his heart pouring out through the instrument, a story of struggle, hope, and quiet resilience. The boy's hands moved faster now, creating a rhythm that seemed to dance through the hall. The sound was no longer just music. It was a conversation between him and everyone present. Every person listening felt it in their own way, whether as awe, surprise, or a sudden warmth that came from witnessing something unexpected. A few of the teenagers who had laughed earlier exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. They were no longer mocking, but unsure how to react. Some frowned in concentration, trying to follow the intricate patterns, while others simply stopped breathing for a moment, caught in the beauty of the performance. The boy's confidence continued to grow with each passing note. He felt a rhythm building inside him, a sense of control over the instrument that made him feel alive in a way nothing else had before. His earlier fear of judgment was slowly fading, replaced by the joy of creating something real, something that could touch others. He noticed subtle changes in the audience. Parents whispering to each other, children staring wide-eyed, a few people tapping their feet unconsciously. He realized that the music was breaking down the walls that laughter had built, brick by brick, note by note. As he played, he recalled the countless nights he had spent practicing alone. There were times when he had felt weak, when his fingers had ached, when doubt had crept in like a shadow. But he had kept going because the music mattered more than the fear. Every mistake he had made in practice, every note he had struggled to master, had prepared him for this moment. Now, as the audience listened, he felt the reward of all that effort, not as applause, but as the quiet acknowledgement that he could rise above the expectations of others. The boy's melody shifted, becoming more complex, weaving layers of sound that seemed to tell a story of its own. There were highs and lows, soft whispers and bold declarations. He noticed a few people leaning in closer, their expressions filled with curiosity and admiration. Even the skeptical observers could no longer look away. The music had captured them, making them forget the ragged appearance of the boy, the old instrument, the mocking laughter. In this moment, none of that mattered. Only the music existed, flowing from his hands into the hearts of everyone present. The boy felt a sense of connection, a bond that went beyond words. He could sense the energy of the room, the collective heartbeat of an audience caught between disbelief and awe. It was as if the music had created a bridge between him and the strangers who had judged him so quickly. For the first time, he felt that his talent had the power to change the way people saw him, to make them understand that there was more beneath the surface than anyone had imagined. As the piece progressed, his emotions began to rise with the music. There was a joy in his movements, a pride in his skill, and a quiet defiance against the doubt that had shadowed him for so long. He could feel every note resonating not just in the hall, but inside him, affirming that he had taken the right step by coming here, by facing the crowd, by refusing to let laughter define him. The audience was responding in their own way, some with wide eyes, others with mouths slightly open, all listening in silent admiration. The boy's music continued to grow, a tapestry of sound that was both powerful and delicate. Every movement of his hands, every subtle shift in tempo, added to the story he was telling. He felt the fear that had plagued him moments before transform into exhilaration. He realized that he was not just playing for the audience. He was playing for himself, for the joy of expressing something that had lived inside him for so long. The audience could sense it too, the authenticity and passion that came from a place of truth. By the time he reached the middle of his piece, the boy noticed the shift was complete. The laughter and mockery that had greeted him at the start were gone. Every eye was fixed on him, every ear tuned to the music. The teenagers who had joked now looked uncertain, their expressions a mix of awe and regret. A few people in the front row whispered to each other, amazed at the skill and emotion being displayed. The boy did not seek their validation. He only allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. He had proved to himself that he could rise above doubt and fear, and that was enough to carry him forward. As he prepared to transition into a more intricate section, the boy felt a new wave of energy. The audience had become part of the experience, their silence a sign of respect and engagement. He could sense their anticipation for what was to come, and it pushed him to play with even greater care and precision. Each note was deliberate, each phrase intentional. He knew that the story he was telling through his music was reaching people in a way words never could. The boy's fingers danced across the strings, weaving a complex melody that seemed to soar and dip like a bird in flight. He felt completely immersed, every part of him connected to the music and to the room. He noticed subtle reactions in the crowd, heads nodding, fingers tapping, eyes widening. People who had doubted him moments ago were now captivated. He could feel the tension in the hall dissolve, replaced by a shared sense of wonder. The boy realized that this was more than just a performance. It was a moment where barriers fell, where judgment gave way to understanding, where talent could shine through despite appearances. As the last few notes of the middle section lingered in the air, the boy took a steadying breath. He could feel the collective focus of the audience on him, and it filled him with both pride and humility. He knew that the final section would be the most challenging, requiring every ounce of skill and emotion he possessed. But he also knew that he was ready. The journey from nervousness to confidence had begun, and he was determined to see it through to the end. In that quiet moment between sections, the boy felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had faced the laughter, the doubt, and the skepticism, and had begun to transform it into attention and admiration. He knew that the hardest part was not behind him, but the experience so far had shown him that he could rise to the challenge. The audience was no longer a threat. They were participants in the story he was telling through his music. With a final deep breath, he let his hands move once more, ready to continue, ready to take them further into the world he had created, note by note, emotion by emotion, melody by melody. The boy felt a surge of energy as he moved into the next part of his performance. The music had taken on a life of its own, flowing through him with an intensity he had never experienced before. His fingers moved with remarkable speed and precision, hitting notes that seemed impossible just moments ago. Every sound carried a sense of passion and purpose, and for the first time he felt fully alive on the stage. The audience had become more than observers. They were part of the performance, their attention wrapping around each note, absorbing it, responding in silence. He noticed the subtle reactions in the crowd. People who had been laughing before were now leaning forward, eyes wide with surprise. A few whispered to each other, barely audible, expressing astonishment at what they were hearing. The teenagers who had mocked him now looked on in stunned silence, unable to conceal their shock. Parents exchanged glances, some nodding as if acknowledging the brilliance that had emerged before them. Children stared, eyes shining, captivated by the transformation from a timid boy to a commanding musician. The boy did not seek their praise, but the recognition fueled his confidence, and he allowed himself to immerse completely in the music. As he played, the boy felt the emotions inside him pouring outward. There was joy, hope, a quiet defiance against the doubt that had plagued him for so long. Every note became a message, a story of struggle, perseverance, and the power of believing in oneself. He remembered the long nights spent practicing, the times he had felt tired and frustrated, the moments when he had almost given up. All of that had led to this point, and he poured it into the music with every fiber of his being. The hall seemed to vibrate with the intensity of his performance, and he felt the connection with the audience grow stronger with each passing moment. The boy's playing became more intricate and complex, each section blending seamlessly into the next. He experimented with dynamics, playing softly at times to draw the listener in, then rising to powerful crescendos that filled the entire room. The contrast between quiet and loud, between gentle and intense, created a rhythm that captivated everyone present. The audience was now completely silent, holding their breath, drawn into the world he was creating. The boy could feel their anticipation, their excitement, their awe, and it pushed him to play with even greater emotion. He began to notice the subtle ways in which the audience was responding. Some were leaning forward, as if trying to catch every note, while others had their eyes closed, lost in the music. Children were swaying slightly to the rhythm, and a few adults had tears in their eyes, moved by the unexpected beauty of the performance. Even the teenagers who had mocked him were now completely silent, their earlier arrogance replaced by genuine admiration. The boy did not let this distract him. He focused on the music, letting it guide his movements, letting it tell the story he had carried in his heart for so long. The complexity of the piece increased, and the boy's confidence soared. His fingers moved effortlessly, weaving melodies that danced and intertwined, creating a tapestry of sound that was both intricate and emotionally powerful. He felt a sense of freedom in the performance, as if he were speaking directly to the hearts of the audience through the music. The room seemed to pulse with energy, every listener absorbed in the experience, caught in the spell of the boy's talent. As he played, he thought about how far he had come. The boy remembered the doubts, the struggles, the moments of fear, and he felt a quiet sense of triumph. He had faced the laughter, the judgment, and the skepticism, and he had not faltered. Instead, he had transformed it into something beautiful, something that demanded attention and respect. The music was his voice, his way of showing the world that appearances could be deceiving and that talent could shine through no matter the circumstances. The boy's performance reached a particularly challenging section, one that required both technical skill and emotional depth. He approached it with focus and determination, letting the music guide his hands and his heart. Each note was precise, each movement deliberate, and the result was a section that left the audience in awe. They could feel the intensity, the emotion, the sheer skill that the boy displayed. The earlier laughter and doubt had completely vanished, replaced by admiration and a sense of wonder. The boy smiled slightly, not out of pride, but from the quiet satisfaction of knowing that he had given everything he had. He continued to play, allowing the music to flow naturally, unrestricted by fear or hesitation. The audience was now fully engaged, completely absorbed in the performance. People who had been skeptical moments before were now leaning forward, eyes wide, unable to look away. Children were mesmerized, parents were moved, and even the most critical observers were forced to acknowledge the talent before them. The boy felt a deep connection with everyone in the room, a bond formed through the shared experience of the music. The melody began to take on a more emotional tone, conveying feelings of hope, longing, and triumph. The boy's expression reflected the depth of his emotions. His eyes closed as he let the music guide him. He could feel the energy of the audience, the way they were responding to each note, and it encouraged him to play with even greater passion. The performance had become more than just a display of skill. It was a journey, an emotional experience that everyone in the room could feel. The boy had transformed the stage into a space where music spoke louder than words, where emotions were shared and understood without a single sentence being spoken. As he reached the climax of the piece, the boy's fingers moved with extraordinary precision and speed. The notes soared, creating a powerful, sweeping sound that filled every corner of the hall. The audience was completely captivated, some on the edge of their seats, others holding their breath, all completely immersed in the moment. The boy felt a sense of exhilaration, knowing that he had captured the attention and admiration of everyone present. The music was no longer just his own. It had become a shared experience, a story told through sound that connected him with every listener. The boy's confidence grew with each passing moment. He had faced the doubts, the laughter, and the skepticism, and he had turned them into something beautiful and unforgettable. The audience's reaction reinforced his belief in himself, but more importantly, it affirmed the power of his music, the way it could reach people, touch them, and transform their perception. The boy felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had given everything he had to the performance and that it had been received with genuine appreciation. As the music continued, The boy felt a sense of flow, a rhythm that seemed to guide him effortlessly through the piece. Each note was intentional, each phrase carefully crafted. Yet there was a natural spontaneity that made the performance feel alive and dynamic. The audience was completely engaged, their emotions mirroring the ebb and flow of the music. The boy could sense their admiration, their surprise, and their growing respect, and it encouraged him to play with even greater dedication and passion. The boy's performance was reaching its final section, the part that would leave a lasting impression on everyone present. He focused all his energy and emotion into each note, letting the music convey the story of his journey, his struggles, and his triumphs. The audience was silent, completely absorbed, their attention fixed on the boy and the music he was creating. The earlier mockery and doubt had been replaced by awe, admiration, and a deep appreciation for the talent and dedication he had shown. As he played the final notes, the boy felt a sense of completion and satisfaction. The performance had been a journey, one that had transformed both him and the audience. He had faced the laughter and skepticism and had emerged victorious, not through words, but through the power of his music. The audience remained silent for a moment, processing the experience, and then slowly, one by one, they began to clap. The applause grew, filling the hall with a powerful, collective recognition of the boy's talent. He smiled, humbled by the response, knowing that this was just the beginning of his journey and that he had taken an important step toward sharing his gift with the world. The applause had started as a slow murmur, but it quickly grew louder, echoing through the hall like rolling thunder. The boy's heart raced, but it wasn't the nervous pounding he had felt earlier. This was a different kind of excitement, one that came from knowing he had captured the audience's attention, that he had transformed their doubt into admiration. He lowered his hands from the instrument for just a moment, letting the sound of clapping wash over him, but his mind was already preparing for the next section. There was more to play, more to show, and he was determined to give every ounce of himself. He took a deep breath and returned to the music, this time with a sense of calm confidence. The notes came easily now, flowing like a river, smooth and continuous. The boy felt the melody rising and falling, creating moments of tension and release that kept the audience completely engaged. Every movement of his fingers was deliberate, yet effortless, a combination of skill and passion honed over countless hours of practice. The hall seemed to hum with energy, each person drawn further into the story he was telling through the music. The boy noticed the faces in the crowd. There was wonder and amazement, a silent acknowledgement that this performance was extraordinary. The teenagers who had laughed before were no longer smirking. Their expressions were serious, their eyes wide with disbelief. Adults who had been skeptical were now leaning forward, completely focused, as if every note was a revelation. Children watched in awe, some swaying slightly to the rhythm, completely caught up in the magic of the moment. The boy didn't play for them, but he felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that they were listening, really listening to every sound he produced. As he moved deeper into the piece, the complexity increased. There were sections that demanded precise timing, intricate finger movements, and perfect coordination. The boy had practiced these parts countless times in his room, often in silence, with no one to watch, no one to cheer him on. Yet now, on this stage, he executed them flawlessly. The audience could feel the skill and dedication behind each note. They were not just hearing music. They were witnessing talent born from perseverance, passion, and relentless practice. The melody began to swell, rising to a powerful crescendo that filled the room with sound. The boy felt his entire body vibrating with the music, completely in tune with the rhythm, the harmony, and the emotion. He could sense the audience's energy, feeding back into his performance, creating a loop of excitement and admiration. The hall seemed alive, every listener caught in the spell of the boy's talent. The applause that had started earlier had become a sustained cheer, though it was quieter now, held in awe of the music itself rather than expressed between pieces. There was a moment when the boy paused briefly, letting a single note linger in the air. The silence that followed was profound, almost reverent. He could feel the collective breath of the audience, the anticipation for what would come next. Then, with a subtle motion, he continued, weaving the note into a series of complex chords that seemed to tell a story without words. The music conveyed hope, struggle, triumph, and joy. It was as if every person in the hall could feel the journey the boy had taken to reach this moment, and the emotion resonated deeply within them. The boy's confidence grew with each passing measure. He had faced the laughter, the doubt, and the mockery, and now he was showing them something they would never forget. His playing was no longer just technically impressive. It was emotional, expressive, and compelling. Each note carried meaning, each phrase told a story. He felt the power of the music in his hands, in his heart, and in the eyes of the audience. They were witnessing a transformation, and the boy knew it. He could see it in their faces, in the way they leaned forward, in the way their expressions had shifted from skepticism to awe. As the piece reached its climax, the boy played with extraordinary intensity. His fingers moved like lightning, each note crisp and clear, each movement deliberate yet flowing. The music rose to a crescendo, filling every corner of the hall, and the audience was completely enraptured. Parents clutched their children's hands, children stared wide-eyed, and even the most critical observers were captivated, unable to look away. The boy felt a surge of exhilaration, knowing that he had captured their hearts, that he had shown them the depth of his talent and the power of his dedication. He allowed himself a brief smile as he noticed the reaction. The clapping had started again, tentative at first, then growing stronger, until it filled the hall with a roar of appreciation. People were on their feet, cheering and clapping, some even whistling, caught up in the energy of the moment. The boy felt a sense of humility as he continued to play, letting the music speak for itself, refusing to be distracted by the applause. He knew that the real triumph was not in the recognition, but in the music itself, in the connection he had created with every listener. The boy's final section was approaching, the part that would leave the most lasting impression. He focused all his energy and emotion into each note, letting the music convey everything he had experienced. The struggle, the determination, the hope, and the triumph. His fingers moved with precision and grace, each sound resonating with power and beauty. The audience was completely silent, caught in the spell of the performance, as if holding their breath to savor every note. The boy felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had shared his story, his talent, and his passion with the world. As he played the final notes, the hall seemed to hold its breath. The music lingered, echoing softly, creating a moment of profound silence. Then, as the last sound faded, the audience erupted into applause. It was a thunderous, heartfelt response, a collective expression of admiration and amazement. The boy smiled, humbled and grateful, knowing that he had touched their hearts with his music. The laughter and doubt that had greeted him earlier were gone, replaced by respect, awe, and a recognition of his extraordinary talent. People began to approach him, offering congratulations, praise, and encouragement. Some spoke of the skill and emotion they had witnessed, others of the courage it took to face the stage despite initial judgment. The boy listened quietly, feeling a mix of pride and humility. He had not performed for accolades, but the recognition was gratifying. It was proof that perseverance, passion, and dedication could overcome doubt and skepticism. It was proof that talent, when nurtured and expressed with sincerity, could change the way people saw the world. The boy left the stage with his instrument in hand, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond the applause. He had faced the laughter, the doubt, and the judgment, and had emerged victorious, not just as a performer, but as someone who had proven to himself that he could rise above fear. The experience had transformed him, instilling confidence and a deeper understanding of his own abilities. The audience, too, had been transformed, their perceptions challenged, their hearts moved by the music of a boy they had once underestimated. As he walked away from the stage, the boy knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more performances, more challenges, more opportunities to share his talent with the world. But for now, he allowed himself a quiet moment of satisfaction, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He had faced doubt, overcome fear, and created something beautiful that resonated with others. In that moment, he understood that the power of music, combined with courage and determination, could change not only his life but the lives of those who listened. The applause continued, echoing in his ears, a reminder of the triumph he had achieved and the possibilities that lay ahead. The hall was still buzzing with excitement even after the boy had left the stage. People were talking in low, awed tones, recounting the moments that had left them breathless. Some had tears in their eyes, others were still clapping as if unable to stop. It was clear that the performance had left a lasting mark on everyone present. The boy, meanwhile, had stepped into a quiet corner, holding his instrument close, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and wonder. He could hardly believe what had just happened. The laughter, the whispers, the doubt. It had all disappeared, replaced by respect and recognition he had never imagined possible. As he walked through the hall, people approached him, offering congratulations and kind words. Some spoke of how they had underestimated him, how they had doubted his abilities based on appearances alone. Others praised the emotion and depth of his music, remarking that it had touched them in ways they could not describe. The boy listened quietly, a small smile on his face, feeling a warmth that went beyond mere praise. This was validation, yes, but more importantly, it was a recognition that his dedication, his passion, and his perseverance had truly mattered. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. The long nights spent practicing alone, the small victories and the mistakes, the moments of doubt that he had pushed through. All of it had led to this performance. He realized that the real triumph was not in the applause, but in the knowledge that he had faced fear and judgment and had emerged stronger, braver, and more confident. That understanding filled him with a sense of quiet pride, a satisfaction that went beyond words. Over the next few days, word of the performance spread throughout the town. People who had attended spoke to friends and neighbors, describing the boy's talent and the way he had captivated the audience. Some local newspapers ran small articles, praising the young musician's skill and dedication. Invitations began to arrive for him to perform at other events, from school assemblies to community gatherings. Each invitation was an opportunity, a chance to share his music with more people, and the boy felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had discovered that his passion could have an impact, that it could inspire and move others, and he was eager to continue. The boy returned home each evening, still holding the memory of the stage in his mind. He would practice as he always had, but now with a new sense of confidence and determination. He experimented with new melodies, explored different rhythms, and refined his technique. The experience of performing before an audience that had once doubted him had given him a new perspective. He realized that music was not just about skill. It was about expression, connection, and the courage to share a piece of oneself with the world. Teachers and mentors began to take notice as well. One local music instructor, who had attended the talent show, offered guidance and encouragement. The boy welcomed this, eager to learn and grow. The mentorship helped him to develop more advanced techniques and to explore the emotional depth of his performances even further. He found joy not only in practicing alone but also in discussing music, learning from someone who recognized and nurtured his potential. This guidance opened doors he had never imagined, giving him tools to expand his talent and reach new heights. In the months that followed, the boy's reputation grew. He performed at local events, school functions, and community gatherings, each time captivating the audience with his skill and passion. The initial laughter and doubt he had faced seemed like a distant memory, replaced by admiration and respect. People who had once doubted him now followed his performances, eager to hear his music and to witness the talent that had once been overlooked. The boy carried himself with humility, never forgetting the fear and judgment he had once faced, using it instead as motivation to continue growing and improving. The experience also changed the way he viewed himself. He realized that talent alone was not enough. Perseverance, practice, and belief in oneself were equally important. The boy became more confident in his abilities, more willing to take risks, and more determined to pursue his passion despite obstacles. He understood that the journey of a musician was ongoing, with each performance, each practice session, and each new challenge contributing to growth and mastery. This mindset allowed him to approach his music with both discipline and creativity, blending technical skill with emotional expression. The boy's story began to inspire others in the community as well. Children who had attended the talent show talked about him with excitement, eager to try new instruments or to practice harder. Parents shared his story as an example of determination and courage, teaching their children that appearances could be deceiving and that true talent and effort could shine through despite doubt or adversity. The boy's journey became a symbol of hope and possibility, demonstrating that dedication and passion could lead to unexpected and rewarding outcomes. As he continued to perform, the boy also discovered the joy of connecting with his audience in a deeper way. He learned to sense their reactions, to adjust the tempo and intensity of his playing to match the mood of the room, and to create an experience that was not just about notes and rhythms, but about emotion and storytelling. He realized that music had the power to communicate what words could not, to reach hearts and minds in ways that transcended language or background. This understanding enriched his performances, making each one unique and memorable. The boy also began to dream bigger. He thought about performing in larger venues, sharing his music beyond the town, and perhaps even pursuing a career as a musician. These dreams were no longer distant fantasies. They felt achievable, grounded in the confidence and experience he had gained. He understood that success would require continued dedication, practice, and perseverance, but he was willing to embrace the challenge. Each performance, each new piece of music, was a step toward a future filled with possibility. Through it all, the boy remained humble and focused. He remembered the laughter that had greeted him when he first approached the stage, and he carried that memory not as a source of bitterness, but as a reminder of how far he had come. He understood that every challenge and every moment of doubt could be overcome with courage, practice, and belief in oneself. The boy's journey had taught him resilience, patience, and the importance of staying true to one's passion, no matter the obstacles. In the quiet moments when he practiced alone, the boy reflected on the transformation he had undergone. He thought about the first steps onto the stage, the fear and nervousness that had gripped him, and the way the music had carried him through. He realized that the performance had been more than just a display of talent. It had been a turning point in his life, a moment when he discovered the power of determination, the importance of self-belief, and the ability to touch others through the beauty of music. These lessons would stay with him forever, guiding him through future challenges and triumphs alike. The boy's story became a testament to the idea that greatness can emerge from unexpected places. The crowd that had once laughed and doubted him had been transformed, and so had he. Through courage, passion, and relentless dedication, he had shown that talent, when nurtured and shared, could inspire, uplift, and change lives. The experience had not only shaped him as a musician but also as a person, teaching him the value of perseverance, humility, and the impact of sharing one's gifts with the world. As the boy looked ahead, he felt a sense of hope and excitement for the future. There were more stages to perform on, more audiences to reach, and more music to create. He knew that challenges would come, that doubt and criticism might return, but he also knew that he now had the strength, skill, and experience to face them. The boy had learned that true success was not measured by immediate recognition or applause, but by the courage to pursue one's passion and the ability to touch the hearts of others along the way. And so, with his instrument in hand and a heart full of determination, the boy continued on his journey. Each performance, each note, each audience would be a new opportunity to grow, to inspire, and to share the gift that had once been hidden behind ragged clothes and uncertain steps. He had turned doubt into triumph, fear into confidence, and potential into reality. The boy's story was no longer just about a single performance. It was about the power of perseverance, the magic of music, and the extraordinary possibilities that await those who refuse to give up on their dreams.